just in case you're on the wrong Zoom call, kind of like walking into a classroom and being in the wrong class, today is all about laugh your way to productivity with a Tickler system. So welcome. I know there's a lot of people on the call that I know, and there's a couple people I don't really know too well. So if this is your first time to POSSEs Pen is really all about, well, it used to be a physical support group, and we would help each other with all kinds of organizing and productivity topics. And since the pandemic, it is now kind of a give back vehicle and a fantastic way for me to stay in touch with everybody since I'm still relatively isolated. I am doing physical organizing again for folks who are comfortable with having me and for folks that I'm comfortable going into their homes or their offices. So I'll tell you more about that later. But today I'm going to tell you all about a Tickler system. And I'm going to go back to the 90s when I was fresh out of college with a hospitality degree. And I was an assistant manager in a business called Allied Signal in Morristown, which is no longer there. That's what happens when you get old, things disappear. Anyways, my first day on the job, I went into the catering department, and we served a lot of people at Allied Signal. We probably did several thousand customers during lunch, and we had a tremendous amount of executive dining rooms and a lot of catering deliveries to executive offices. And the first thing the catering manager showed me was a Tickler system, but at the time I didn't even know what that was called. And it was the number 1 to 31, which was for the days of this month. And then it had 12 more files, which were January through December. So it was kind of like an annual perpetual file system. And every time there was a catering order on a specific date of this month, that catering order would go in that date specific delivery. And if it was further out, it would go in the following months. And it was extremely efficient. You always knew where something was supposed to be on every day, and you always knew what was coming up. So that was my first experience with a Tickler system. And then as I continued on in other management positions, I found myself taking that concept and using it in my own roles, when I had to go to meetings, when I had projects due, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little history of how my Tickler system started. So just a couple of housekeeping before I really dive into it. I did want to mention to everybody that this is being recorded. And what I do after the recording is Deborah will edit it and it will go into next month's newsletter. So if you ever miss the call or want to listen to it again, it will be in next month's newsletter. And if you're not on my newsletter list, all you have to do is in the chat box, put down your name, your email address, and Deborah and I will make sure you get onto my newsletter list. So right now, everybody is hopefully in mute. And if you have questions as we go forward, put them in the chat box, and Deborah and I will figure out when to open it up for Q&A as we move along. So thank you for coming. Blog information, I kind of just mentioned my e-zine. So a lot of times all this information will either be on my website in blog format, or you will see it in next month's newsletter. So here we go. We're going to talk about our Tickler system today, and then we're going to open it up to questions. And during the Q&A section, you can either ask about the Tickler system, or you can ask any type of organizing or productivity question you would like. And then we'll tell you about the next pen if you weren't here earlier, and then we will close. All right, so here we go. So what is a Tickler system? Literally, if you were to Google it, you would find out that it is 43 folders. And the first 31 folders are date specific, 1 to 31, and it represents the month that you are currently in. So it's the next 31 days of, it's your next 31 days, okay? And then the following 12 folders are the months of the year. So altogether, it's 43 folders. When I set up Tickler systems for clients or myself, I like to use 50 folders, and here's why, because you can purchase hanging file folders in boxes of 25, so you would only need 2 boxes. And besides the 43 folders that are going to be date or month specific, I like to have those other 7 as what I call active files. So things that recur all the time but are not date specific. So for example, I can't turn around too much here because you'll lose my voice, but my right hand is now touching my lateral filing cabinet, and my Tickler system is in this top drawer. So all I have to do is turn to reach my Tickler system. But some of my active folders would be, I have one for Deborah Davis because we work together all the time. So I'll put information in there that I want to talk to Deborah about. I have another one called Awaiting Response, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. I have one called Wrap Up. I have one called GBAR. I have one called NAPO. These are organizations that I have monthly responsibilities with. So that's all in my Tickler system. Those are the other 7 folders besides the 43 folders. I do use a physical system. I am half in paper, half digital at this point in my business and my personal life. For those of you who want to be completely paperless, you can go and look at 43.me. I will be completely candid. I haven't tried it yet, but it's by David Allen from Getting Things Done, and it's probably fantastic. So the concept that I'm going to teach you today, if you want to go digital, you can try out a digital version, but it'll be easy for me to show you how to do this physically if you then want to move to the digital version. So I'm going to talk about why I love this task and why it's one of my favorite management tools. So I'm going to stop sharing at the moment, and I'm just going to talk to you. Okay, so I told you that my Tickler system is right here. You hear it? That's the filing cabinet. So this is a pile of papers on my desk. Okay, so this is how it works. I open up my Tickler system. Now, right now, we are in the month of June, and today, my goodness, sometimes I actually have to look and see what day it is. So today is June 17th. So my file for June 17th is, can you see the 17th? Yes, okay. So this is my 17th folder. So right underneath my laptop is sitting here because I'm on Zoom, but this is a tray and I call it my in tray, my daily to-do tray, my inbox, whatever you want to call it. The only thing in my in tray is everything I want to do today, June 17th. So anything I had in here is now in my in tray. So any papers I'm going to process, any to-dos, any tasks are sitting here on my desk. I think somebody's making a little noise, so if you could mute yourself, that would be terrific. Okay, so now if you were to look in my lateral filing cabinet, you would see the numbers starting at 18. So I would have 18, 19, 20 through the end of the month. And then at the end of the month, you would see July, because that would be the next month. So there's 2 ways you can set it up. You can move the number, so 17 right now, I could go to July, and July could have now the numbers 1 through 17, or I could just leave the month as is. So if you have questions about that, I can address that in a little bit. Whichever way you use it, it's fine. It's all based on how you want to habitualize your system. The important thing is that you have your date-specific folders up front, followed by the months. Okay, so today everything I'm supposed to do is sitting in my in tray, and everything I'm supposed to do tomorrow is sitting in my folder called July 18th. And everything that I want to do on Friday, sorry, I said July, I meant June. Everything I want to do on Friday, the 19th, is in Friday, and on and on. And if there's something I don't want to get done this month, but I want to be tickled or reminded about it next month, I put it in July, August, September, October, etc. So, paper, paper, paper. Task, 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 however you want to look at it. So yesterday I was on the phone with Verizon, and I'm moving, so I decided on a new service, and they are coming to install on July 1st from 9 to 12. Yeah, they're supposed to come somewhere between 9 and 11. What's important about that is I took down this information because I didn't want to spend a lot of money. We're downsizing, and I wanted to change my service package. So they talked me into going for their test drive where over the next 30 days, they watch what programs I look at and then they offer me a package. Now, I'm not going to remember this 30 days from now. I'm not telling you right now. But if I put it in a date for July when 30 days are over, then I'm going to remember. So I can put this in the number 17 for next month under July. So that goes in the 17th. Contact information. Those of you who are running a business or know a lot of people, you're constantly meeting people, you're getting their email, their address, their phone number, etc. And I joined an association recently called RIA, which is the Real Estate Education Association. And I have all of the contact information for the executive director. This needs to go in my database. It needs to go in my CRM. I want to be able to have all of her information. So on Friday, I have something called my wrap up. I block it out. I block 2 hours every Friday called my wrap up. So if I have all kinds of loose ends, data input, etc., it goes in there. So this napkin, one of them has the phone number, and this Post-it, one of them has the email, because that's what I had on my desk when I got the information. That goes in file number 19.
Jean Marie, question
Yes.
quick.
Yes.
When back to Verizon, you said
Yes.
that Verizon is 30 days out, but I
Yes.
think you said it goes in 17. But did you mean it goes in the July folder and then you'll get to that later, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
ding, ding, ding.
So something for the
bottom line is I have 30 days before they're going to charge me for all the programming, and I don't want to be charged for all the programming. So what I'll say to myself is, when do I want to follow up with Verizon? And I'll make sure it's within 30 days. You can do this with warranties, manuals, coupons, anything you know that's going to come up for expiration. You can say, okay, best productivity question in the world. If not now, when? So where am I going to put Verizon or anything else? What do I want my future follow-up to be? And now you can be date specific or month specific. So you can, check this off your brain by saying, I don't have to think about this piece of paper anymore or this task if I decide now when I want to follow up. So that's how it works. And you can use it for things that are recurring. So for example, this is just, just a manila piece of paper and it says QuickBooks on it. So the second of each month, I like to reconcile my Posse QuickBooks. It's a chore I don't like to do. It takes me about an hour, but I put this in the second. I put this in number 2. So, we already passed this month, so it would go in the 2 for the next month in July. And then I'm going to pull it out when I pull out all the things I say I'm going to do on July 2nd, and then I'm going to sit down and do my QuickBooks. And then I just move it from month to month, and I always remember it. So if you have things that you do the same date or the same day of the month, the Tickler system works really well for that.
Can I just clarify for someone that hasn't used this? Because on the 2nd of June, you do it. Then you take it out of the 2nd of June. There isn't a 2nd of July folder yet. So
there is, there were 2 ways to set it up. So tell me if you can't hear me. So what you can do is, let's just pretend it's the beginning of the month. Let's say it's June 1st, okay? So the June 1st folder comes out, it gets dumped into your in tray because that's what you're gonna work on. And now what you can do, and the choice is yours, you can take that number 1 folder and you can put it behind July, or you can leave the 1 to 31 the way it is and stick that information in the July folder, or you can put the number as each day passes. So right now it's June 17th. I can take those 17 numbers, 1 to 17, those 17 folders, and move it behind July. So if, I forget what we were talking about. So if it was July 2nd that I want to call Verizon or follow up or go online, I can either put it in number 2 behind July, if that's the way I choose to set it up, or I can leave it in the front. It's personal choice, personal choice. So it's really a visual, the way you like to see it.
Oh, great.
Okay. So going back to, for example, let's just say the QuickBooks reconciliation or whatever banking you want to do. I could, and I told you I'm all paper. Nobody look at my account numbers. So I already you can print out whatever you want and put the printout in there as well. So you can leave a note for yourself. You can leave reminders, papers, Post-its, a BevNap, a document, an agenda, a set of directions, whatever you want for safekeeping in the date that you want to see it next and work on it. So the next piece of paper I have, it says, call Paula at Ferguson. So I'm in the middle of a home renovation. Everybody, well, most of you know I'm moving. So don't sell your house and move during a pandemic. It's not fun. Not fun at all. But anyways, so this is the plumbing order, and we were missing the toilet handle in our plumbing order. So my note was, I called her, and now I'm waiting on response. So normally what I would do is I would put this in my awaiting on response folder. And just like my wrap up on Friday afternoons, I go through awaiting on response and I go through my wrap up so that nothing falls through the cracks. It just so happened that I checked my email before I got on this webinar, and Paula told me that the toilet handle is not coming in until September. So bummer, but anyways, this now goes in September, because in September, I want that stupid toilet handle. Okay, next piece of paper I have is a printout from Mahwah High School, and I did print it out off my email. I'm sorry for all you tree huggers. My son's last day of senior year is this Friday the 19th. And he owes $3 for a transcript and $4.30 for lunch. And I was on the phone with the secretary at Mahwah High School trying to figure out whatever portal it was where I could deposit the money, and nothing was working. Long story short, when he goes to school on Friday, he needs to bring these 2 checks. And I'm sure if he doesn't pay this $7.30, they're not going to give him his diploma. So this is going to go in Friday on the 19th, and I'm going to make sure I write the checks that morning and he takes them to school. So that's that. My husband is in charge of travel, and we just canceled a flight, and he said, save this for November, because we are hoping to go to Disney World in November. So this goes into November. And as you can see, I use my Tickler system as a combination of both personal and professional, because that's my life. Some people, I set them up a personal Tickler maybe in their kitchen, maybe a smaller version, and then we have the professional version in their office, or if their office is somewhere else. Again, it's what makes sense to you. For me, it all makes sense to keep it in my office because I'm doing everything in my office. Next piece of paper came in the mail. It is time for Maggie's well visit. So Maggie is my dog, and so the veterinarian is telling me you need to bring her back in, and I'm thinking the next month I don't have time to do this. So I'm going to put this in August. So sorry, Maggie, you have to wait for your well visit until August. All right. This Sunday is Father's Day. This is the card I bought for my husband for Father's Day, the 21st. So it's going to go in the 21st because I'm probably not going to write it out until that morning. This is just a personal card. A client of mine is having her hip replaced this week, and she moved out to California recently, and I want to make sure that I send her a card. So I am going to do this on the 20th. So that's going to go in number 20. This is a check that came to my son. It's addressed to my son. It's a scholarship from a real estate association, and I am so grateful for it because it's going to pay for his books next year. But I want him to write a thank you letter. I don't want to write the thank you letter. I want him to do it. But he's having his last week of school, so I'm going to put this in Friday, and I'm going to talk to him about writing this thank you card, and I'm going to get him everybody's address information. Okay. So this is a folder called the Center for Real Estate Education. So this is a real estate school in Hackensack that I recently connected with, and they would like me to do some homeowner classes this fall. I had 2 interviews with them, and they've asked me to submit classes that I think would work well for their homeowners, which I did. And then, so I did all my follow-up on my end, and I'm going to put this in August because I don't want to see this until August. I will reach back out to them in August. There's really nothing more I can do with this folder at the moment. What I love about using a hanging file folder system for a Tickler is I can take projects like this where the papers might get a little large, and I can just hang it right behind the month or the date that I want to do it. So that's August. So this is something else that came in the mail. It's from the United Breast Cancer Foundation, and it is the first charity that I know about that is picking up at people's homes since the pandemic. So this is what I call an under two, please do. I wanted to put all the contact information in my phone, so when I'm at clients' houses and they say, you know, do you know anybody that's picking up right now? I can go ahead and give the client that information. So I'm actually not going to put it in the Tickler, but I wanted to show it to you. It went as an under two, please do. It went into my phone, and now I can get rid of it because it's in my phone. But if there was something else I wanted to do, I would say to myself, if not now, when? And I would say, where does it go in my Tickler?
Let me just jump in with a question, Jean Marie.
Yep.
Betsy says, I love this. I can see putting all of my to-dos in here, even if I make up a piece of paper for it, which will help me practice and create this ritual or system, as you call it. Yep. Do you put a time on your calendar each day to take care of what is in your day folder?
So I was going to get to that a little later, but I will address that now. So it's so funny because I'm so used to doing live presentations. I was about to ask you all a question, and I know you can raise your hand, but it's very different. I love to marry my Tickler system with my planner. And so what I do is whatever I said I was going to do today, it is in my planner, and I estimate approximately how much time I think it's going to take me. So if today I said I was going to write my newsletter, because I get my newsletter, you know, to Deborah within, 2 weeks before the next month, I would give myself an hour, and I would go ahead and block out an hour. Great question, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. Some people don't use a planner, and that's okay, whatever works for you, and they just use their Tickler. They just open it up every day and they decide what they're going to do. They prioritize their day. I like to prioritize it not only from an information perspective in the Tickler, but then how long is each task going to take me. So in my calendar, which is different from my planner, my calendar has my appointments. I use my phone for all of my appointments, but I use my planner, which is from a company called plannerpads.com, Franklin Covey, Julie Morgenstern, whoever you use, doesn't matter. You can go into Staples. They've got an entire aisle full of planners. Go pick one that works for you. But the idea in a planner is what you're doing is you're strategizing the time between your appointments. So if I'm doing an organizing session with Betsy from 9 to 12, and now I don't have another appointment per se the rest of the day, doesn't mean the rest of my day is open and free. It just means that I'm not scheduled after 12. And now I can say, oh, let me go back to my Tickler. Okay, I wanted to call these people. I wanted to do my email. I wanted to do this reconciliation, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, hope that answers your question. Back to the Tickler. So I purchased the wrong thing on Amazon the other day, and I had to return it. So when I went to UPS, they hand me the receipt. So I'm going to put the receipt in awaiting on response, and then in a couple days when I'm on Amazon, I'll make sure that the credit went through. This was a presentation I recently did called Does Your Home Office Drive You Crazy? And I think I even saw Felicia in our Brady Bunch here. So I did this with Felicia Halpert and Karen Olson. So we had an IT expert, an interior designer, and a professional organizer do this lunch and learn webinar. Anyways, I think it went really well. I loved it. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people. And the question is, how do we leverage it again? So we've done it to a couple of chambers of commerce, and I definitely want to do it again, but I can't do it this month. So I told Felicia and Karen, do you mind if we back burner this until August? So I want to see this again in August, when I will make some calls and probably put it back on my calendar in September. I want to touch it in August because I want to do it again and present it again in September.
Jean Marie,
Yes,
I have a fast question.
yes, ma'am.
You're talking about a paper calendar, but a lot of us are using electronic calendars. And once upon a time, you told me you should never use more than one calendar. Has that changed? Because that was a long time ago.
Okay, great question. I was actually not talking about a paper calendar. My calendar is digital and only have one calendar, whether you do paper or you do digital. So my calendar is digital. My planner is paper. So my Bible at time is the, go ahead.
So that for me is a little confusing, but I don't know if we need to talk about it privately, or I don't want to take up the time because I know you have a lot to present, but it's something that I'm conflicted about. Just saying.
Okay, so we'll do it in the Q&A later, and but I'm a little confused by your question. So let's save it for the chat a little bit later, and if it's, you know, too unwieldy, I'll talk to you offline afterwards.
Sounds great, thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so the next piece of paper I have are notes on a client. So this client had a really big move, and I helped him with the move. I helped him with the storage unit, yada, yada, yada. So he didn't need me during the move. So this week, the moving company moved him, and I want to be mindful that I touch base with him and say, how did it go? Did you love the moving company? Are you settled, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to do this on Friday, because that'll give him a couple days to settle into DC, which is where he went. Okay, so the next thing says GBAR. So GBAR is the Greater Bergen Real Estate Association, Realtor Association. I always mess up the exact name. And I am the secretary for the Professional Development Committee. So this is a monthly responsibility because I take the notes for the meetings. The meetings are always the second Monday. So it is a recurring meeting. It is a recurring responsibility task for me. So what I do is I take the whole folder called GBAR and I put it in when it's coming up for the next meeting. So I did my responsibilities this month. So the next meeting is July 13th, which is the second Monday of each month. So now I'm going to put this whole folder behind the number 13. I'm gonna give like one more example, and then I think you got the idea here. So this is another idea of a project. So I'm currently writing I've written a CE class called Decluttering and Organizing Your Properties for Profit. It was scheduled to go live, and then the pandemic happened. So now I'm changing it over to an online class. I'm just putting the finishing touches on it. I'm working with Deborah. Deborah sent me an email this morning. So when I'm done with this webinar, I have appointments. So I know for a fact I'm not going to get to this until tomorrow. So I'm going to put this in behind number 18. That's 18. Okay. Hopefully I didn't overwhelm you with what to do with all your papers. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen now. Share. Okay. So I might have shared the wrong one, but we'll find out in a second. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, hold on 1 sec. I gotta go to the other one. This is where I get a little confused. Try this. Okay. And this is not moving either. All right. I do know what I'm doing. I just didn't do it right. So hold on 1 second. I'm going back. And then, okay. Whew. All right. So here we are. So you learned what a Tickler system is. You can do it physical, you can do it digital, and why I love this tool. I love this tool because it stops folks, including myself, from cluttering up and stuffing your planners and your calendars. It helps spread out your tasks and your time management so we are not so overwhelmed with what we need to do today or what's sitting on our desk, because it's like a weekly menu. You know, you can spread things out Monday to Friday, you can spread things out for the month so that today you know what you really have time for and you can focus on it. And it's perpetual, so you can use it over and over and over again. So I love that as well. What is not so funny when you're using a Tickler system is, number one, if you don't form a habit. Number 2, you don't prepare for taking time off from it. And number 3, if it doesn't work for you. So that being said, if you've never set up a Tickler system before, I strongly encourage you to give yourself 30 full days. After you set it up for yourself, marry it to your planner, put a reminder in your phone. You might literally have to remember, like you might have to put in your phone or in your planner, first thing in the morning, look in Tickler, because you have to get used to trusting it. Because if you don't trust it, things will fall through the cracks and you're not going to use it. I did a mini presentation of this yesterday, and I used a client example where I was doing somebody's home office, and we had the whole Tickler system set up, and she had a situation where her mom had just gone into an assisted living, and she had a lot of responsibilities relative to her mother's paperwork. So one of her active folders, remember I talked about the active folders? So I have active folders, for example, waiting on response, wrap up, Deb Davis, newsletter, all the things that are not date specific, but I do on a regular basis. So I had created for this client a active folder in her Tickler called Mom. And we had put all kinds of vital documents into that folder so that she was ready to go to the assisted living when she needed to. So anyways, I walked into her home for our organizing session, and she was in a panic, and she's like, I'll be right with you, I'll be right with you. I'm on the phone with the assisted living, and I cannot find my mother's driver's license. And she was running around her house on the phone like a lunatic, turning her kitchen upside down, etc. And I hadn't been there in about a week. So I walked over to her Tickler system, and I pulled out the Mom folder, and inside the Mom folder was her mother's driver's license. So I just calmly walked into the kitchen, and I'm like, hey. I'm like, remember we put all of the vital documents in the Mom folder, and here's the driver's license. And she looked at me and she's like, oh, she was so relieved, but she hadn't formed the habit. She hadn't, trusted the system. So you want to trust the system. You want to do it for 30 days straight, and you definitely want to marry it to your calendar and your planner. So, the title of this is
a question. Are you, before you transition to the next topic?
Okay. So the title of this webinar meeting is "Laugh Your Way to Productivity with a Tickler System." But here's where it can almost be scary. So if you're going to do it, it's kind of like going on a diet. You've got to change your lifestyle, and you got to really commit to it. Okay, so I was going to go to the next slide, but I'll take a question. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, so just to recap. So if we look at your filing cabinet, we would see the 1 to 31 dates behind some of the numbered folders. There are other folders hanging because they are bigger tasks, like you mentioned, G-Bar. So 1 to 31, and then the months, and then you have, explain those other folders, please.
Sure. Okay. Excuse the side of my head for a minute. Okay, so I'll come out of screen sharing in this. Let me come out now. I'll say it. Can you all see me in the little square? I'll just read them off. So these are my active folders that are part of my Tickler, but behind the 43 folders. And they are awaiting on response, book. Okay, now you all know a little secret. I want to write a book. All right, so book's in there. Deb Davis, okay? Because Deb is my staff. I deal with Deb Davis all the time. So every time I think of something, I don't want to text her and send her emails. I want to put everything in the folder. So when we have our once a week phone call, I'm organized enough to have everything in her folder to discuss it. The next one I have is called forms. These are forms that I use all the time. So an inquiry comes in from a prospective client. I have an intake form. I have a speaking form. So I use forms all the time. I have another folder called labels. So these are my return address labels. So when I send out cards, I just use a return address labels. I also have a label for Deborah in here. The next folder is called newsletter ideas. So once a month, without fail, usually, unless there's a pandemic, I write a newsletter. So all my newsletter ideas go in newsletter. And I have another one called speaking, because I do speak all the time, and I like to keep speaking ideas in speaking, even though I have another section of reference files. So that's a good point. Reference files are not Tickler. Your Tickler is meant to deal with active paper only. So what I mean by active paper is paper that you want to see again and touch again soon. An upcoming task, an upcoming responsibility. Reference paper, those are files where you say, I want to keep that for reference in the future, but I don't need to see it or know about it now. So the declaration page comes in for your insurance policy. You know, there are things that they don't belong in your Tickler. Your Tickler is not meant to be a filing system. It's meant to be a finding system. You want to be able to find what you need to do this month, this year, in order to work on it. Very, very different from reference. You know, so for example, if I come home from ShopRite with the receipt, and because my husband has celiac, I save these things for our taxes because we spend so much money buying gluten-free items. My husband does this, not me, but I save it. This goes into my reference folder under, you know, medical. Okay, so that's the difference between reference and active. And today, a Tickler system is all about active. And these active folders are things that I keep in my Tickler system because I am active with them all the time. And then my last active folder is called Wrap Up, which I spoke about. So I do that every Friday. Okay, so don't look at my files right now because now everything's a mess because I showed you my whole life. Okay, so this was the things you want to be very careful of. And then this is what is hysterically good about a Tickler system. It helps you place all your regular occurrences in date-specific folders or monthly occurrences so that you do not forget about them. And again, I would marry this with your calendar and your planner. Every person organizes differently, produces differently, finds office efficiencies differently. Every person is unique. Every office is unique. Everybody's paper is unique. So, you know, take what you love from this, and you're going to have to tweak it. When I set somebody up with a Tickler system, as I'm going through their papers, I'm seeing things that would be perfect in a Tickler system. Contact follow-up gives you a great opportunity to make sure you don't lose touch with people when you need to touch them again. It's fantastic for reminders, for tracking all kinds of financial matters, cash flow. It's great for what I call maybe actions. So maybe a piece of paper comes across your desk or comes across your email and you think to yourself, well, maybe I'd like to do that, but I'm not ready to make that decision now. And that's okay. Sometimes we're just not ready to make decisions. What the Tickler system does is it's forcing you to make decisions on when you want to deal with it. So it prevents you from procrastination, but there are many occasions when you don't want to make a decision on a piece of paper. So what you can say is, okay, I really don't want to make a decision on this right now. When would I like to see it again? And it's okay if you don't want to see it for 6 months. Nothing wrong with that, but you can write that idea on a Post-it and then stick that Post-it, you know, in December. And now you can tell your brain, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm going to remember that in December. And you're going to remember it in December because you used a Tickler system. Delegated items, whenever we delegate things to people, some people are great about follow-up and some people are not. So if you're concerned that you've delegated something to somebody and you want to make sure they return the favor by getting back to you, you can use your Tickler system for that. Follow-up orders and requests, things you purchase, managing workflow, especially large projects. I mean, some of the things we do take us hours and hours and hours, but we chunk it down, you know. So this week I may only be able to spend, 2 hours on my CE course. That's okay. When am I going to spend it? I'm going to tell myself in my Tickler, and then at the end of, let's say I said tomorrow I'd work on my CE class with Deborah. At the end of the 2 hours, I say, now where am I in this project and when do I want to see it again? And I just keep moving the project down the line And guess what? Eventually that project is done. Done, done, done. Storing tickets. So let's say you've got paper tickets to a show or whatever it is. It's a great safe haven for storing things that are important, that kind of thing. Inspirational. I always like to put inspirational in here. You know, maybe one of your active folders is called thank yous. You know, I saved it's not in my Tickler, it's actually in my reference, but maybe you want to, maybe you're really having a hard time in life right now and you need words of wisdom, you need prayers, you need inspirational quotes. You know, there's nothing wrong with keeping that stuff right here so that when you need a moment to breathe, you can pull something like that out. Special days lists. Let's say in your business or in your personal life, you want to send birthday cards, you want to send anniversary cards. You can keep a list, you know, and then move it month to month so that you don't forget somebody's birthday, whether you want to go out and get a gift, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think I spoke before to warranty, coupons, expiration. So, you know, that, well, I think Bed Bath & Beyond is forever, but let's say you get a wonderful coupon and it expires, you know, July 31st. Maybe you're ready to purchase something now, maybe you're not, but you have to be reminded of when that coupon's going to expire or you'll lose the opportunity for that little perk. Okay, so moving on. Thinking outside of the filing cabinet. So I showed you how to set up a Tickler I use a lateral filing cabinet. So I use hanging file folders because that works for me. May not work for everybody. So you could use a file box. So this is a really, really old picture, right? So this is what the pandemic has done for me. My hair is really long and really gray. So we're going back a long time ago. This was actually a presentation I did for Flavor and Fragrance. It was a lunch and learn to about 100 chemists. It's actually a lot of fun. But what I want you to look at is not my hair, not my dress, and definitely not my really, really skinny shins, but look at the boxes on the table. You're going to see what I call a desktop file box, and that's in the green. It's green. And it's just like this one here in brown, and it has little rods in it for hanging file folders. So if you need like a mini version or you want a mobile version, a desktop file box is fantastic. You could go with an inexpensive project box from Staples. You know, they open with the lids, they have the little plastic rods, or you could go with something like this, with this just your, you know, plastic file box. And I don't know, everybody's got different space. This could easily sit under your desk if you need it. Pretty utilitarian, but still works. You could order a beautiful file crate. There's filing carts. The Container Store has a wonderful filing cart. It's white mesh, and the top holds about 50 to 75 hanging file folders. And then there's 2 drawers underneath for supplies. Really, really efficient and practical. Slides easily underneath your desk, or if you're working in your dining room or out on your patio, you just slide it to wherever you're working. So think out of the filing cabinet, think out of the box. We live in a day and an age where things don't have to be so utilitarian, they can be beautiful as well. So instead of having a smoky gray tray from Staples for your in tray, you can now, you know, get a nice faux leather tray or whatever. Make it nice so that you like working and you'll use your systems. Okay, and then please, please, please marry your Tickler with your planner and your calendar. And I think I spoke about the difference before between a calendar and a planner. A calendar is where you put your appointments, just use one, and a planner is where you plan your day, plan your week, plan your quarter, plan your year. It's how you strategize. And, you know, this system isn't for everybody. Some people would say this is way too complicated for me. And that's okay. I really appreciate and honor that. And I moved a piece of paper I had. I've set up Tickler systems, and I still call it a Tickler system. And I've done Monday to Friday folders, you know, because maybe they didn't want to do anything on Saturday and Sunday. Literally 5 folders, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then you could have next week or next month. So if you don't want to go through, you know, 43 folders and 7 active, you can always do something like that. You could do this system with clipboards. You could do this system with whiteboards and Post-its. So you can be as visionary as you want to be with the Tickler system. Okay, so we are going to get to the Ask the Organizer, but before, and I have a funny feeling there's going to be a lot of questions, so I'm going to come back to this in 1 second in case we go over 12 o'clock and some people want to jump off. Next month's POSSEs pen is Boost Your Inbox Immunity, and it's all about how to declutter and really become much more productive with your email. I don't know about everybody on this call, but since COVID-19, my email box has exploded because that is a way everybody can communicate. And I'm probably getting triple to quadruple the amount of emails I used to get. So I'm going to go over, general organizing and productivity principles relative to email. And my colleague Betsy is going to go over the technical aspect. So it is next Wednesday, July 15th at 11 a.m. What will happen is there will be information coming out in my e-zine on how to register. So again, if you do not get my monthly e-zine, Deb's going to put in the chat box how to get on it. That will always have where my presentations are. And my presentations are also always on my website, which is right there under number 1. But today's presentation is still up. You got to give Deb 24 hours. After this call, she will take it down and she will put the information up for next month's e-zine. And then social media, which I'm not very good at, but I do Facebook and I do LinkedIn, so it will be in social media as well. And then I'm going to ask your permission to take August off, okay? So I think I need a month off, and I think you all do too. So we're going to take POSSEs pen off for August, and then I'll come back in September. Okay, so that's me. Don't think you need any of my contact information, but if you do, just ask Deborah in the chat box and she will help you out. And now we are going to go to Q&A, and I can see all your beautiful faces.
I'll just jump in first, Jean Marie, with one perfect example of how the Tickler has saved me before. When you find that perfect birthday card for someone, but maybe their birthday isn't for next month. Like my sister in November, I found a card for her in April when I was buying my younger sister a card. So I bought the card. Well, where do you put that? And how do you remember 6 months later that you even found the card? So it goes in November. So then I pull out November, and her birthday is until the 20th. So I put it in, 5 or 6 days ahead of time in the date so that I can get it written and sent out in the mail. And it's just amazing how it works.
Yes, that's a great example. I'm going to give you a little story how it saved just a Sunday 10 years ago. My daughter was a Girl Scout, and we were having a Girl Scout tea. And for some reason in my head, I thought it was at the Mahwah Sheraton. That was just what it was, right? So I drove with my daughter to the Sheraton, and I walked in, and nobody was in the hotel. And I'm like, my daughter's all dressed up, and it was a Mother's Day tea, right? So I made it a big deal, nice and special, and I thought, okay, I'm obviously in the wrong place. So I called my husband, and I said, please go to the Tickler system and go to today's date and tell me where I'm supposed to be. In 12 seconds, he went to the Tickler, he pulled out, oh, you're supposed to be at the DoubleTree. I'm like, thank you. And I went to the DoubleTree. So I do tell other people in the house about it because sometimes it includes them. But if I ever got hit by a bus, that's where all my information is. Okay, next question. Anne. Oh, you got to unmute yourself, Anne.
I just unmuted. Now, I know that this is for birthday cards and all different things like that, but what about bills? Sometimes I have insurance bills that are like 4 times a year, 2 times a year, and so on, and I never know when it's coming up.
Yes, so you can absolutely use this for all kinds of, financial cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. So you have to say to yourself, when do I want to see it next? So for example, let's take a quarterly insurance bill.
Yeah.
And you pay it in January.
Mm-hmm.
When do you want to pay it again?
Well, in 3 months, we have to pay it every 3 months on
Right.
that one, if it's semi-annually and so on. And how would I know before it comes up?
This is what I'm trying to,
I get caught.
Yes, so let's go back to the quarterly. So let's say you pay it in January and you have to pay it again in March.
Right.
You could put it, for example, in February. And when you're setting up your February tickler, you can put it in the date that you want to pay it. So for example, the third week in February, let's say the 20th. So at the end of the month, and oh, I think I forgot to talk about this. At the end of the month, you then set up anything for the next month. So you could keep a recurring list of insurance payments, whatever kind of payments you want. If you want to pay your bills, say twice a month, say the 1st and the 15th, you could put your bills, in that way. The bottom line is you have to say to yourself, when do I want to pay it again? When do I want to see it again? When do I want to touch it again? And you decide where it's going to go. And it'll never get lost. It's perpetual. If you do something twice a year, so in January, and now you don't need to see it until June. You could also write a list. You could have a list of what you need to pay when, and you just, after you're done paying it, you look at that list and you say, when do I have to pay it again? And you move it to that next date.
Okay, so that would go like if it's insurance for cars and the home and life insurance and health insurance, that would be on the list.
Yeah, you could write yourself. So whether you want to do a whole insurance list or whether you want to do it separate, health, etc., you just say to yourself, when do I want to pay this next? Or when is it due next? And you just keep shuffling it down to the time you want to pay it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Back on that, you could put maybe the website address or your account number or a phone number on it so that when you pull it out, you know exactly where to go, the password or something. Then it just floats through the months.
Yeah, great point, Deb. So let's go back to, like I showed you some of my projects. Let's say you've got a lot of insurance.
Jean Marie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do have a question when you're done with this, going back to the cards for people.
Okay. All right, let me finish with Ann. So you could have an insurance hanging file folder, right? For example, let's just call it health insurance.
Yes.
You could have all your health insurance information in here. Maybe the policy, if you have a PIN number, a password, etc. You have everything in here. And now you just take the whole folder, like I do with projects, and you move it to the date that you want to pay. And it's all right there.
That I like. Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Tova.
Hi, I have a box that I got years ago that has cards in it. It has, any cards you can buy for any occasion. In the front, it's got a variety of ways. It's got months, it's got birthdays, etc. How would one, and I also have been banned for buying cards by a friend of mine. So not that I do it, but my question is, how do you incorporate that? Do you just put them into the back in the month of that?
Okay. I'll tell you how I would do it.
And would putting Post-it notes potentially on a card with the person's name and date also be helpful?
So do you have a list of everybody you send to every year, or each month? Do you know, like this month of June, do you know which people you want to send when a card?
I don't know if I have a physical list anymore or not that's current. I did it one time.
Okay, so let me just back up a little bit. Obviously, you have too many cards, and there's other paper homes. So Tova probably has a box of cards, and that's where the cards live. But
it was a Hallmark box organizer for cards, if that gives you more info.
Yeah. So you have two choices. You could either, if the Hallmark gave you a system, you could try to go with their system. But what I would do is I would figure out, say, each month, who does Tova want to send to? So let's say this month you want to send out 4 birthday cards. I'm going to think you have to know the date that you want to send them the card, right? So let's say you got 4 people. So I would go to the Hallmark home. I would pick out the 4 cards that you want to send to those 4 people, and I would come back to the Tickler system and do one of 2 things. Either put the card in the day that you want to write it and mail it, or hopefully, let's say the birthdays aren't until after the 5th, on the 1st of each month, put all the cards you want to send for the month, write them all out, decide when you're going to mail them, and put them when you want to mail them. So you have to give yourself a system. So for those of you who've never heard me say this, system is an acronym for saving you space, time, energy, and money. Today I'm giving you a Tickler system for your paper, but now I'm talking about a birthday card system for Tova. So Tova has to make a decision on how she wants to set up her system, and then she needs to habitualize it or it's not going to work. So you have to decide, Tova, on a month-to-month basis, how you want to set it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Betsy.
So I love this, by the way. I am the person who does not have a system, and I run a business. So this is going to be my new diet, and I'm going to make a commitment, and I'm going to be ready to go. Watch me in 30 days. But I have this perfect spot right here for this lovely item that I got years ago from you. And I want to utilize it. And it doesn't have the ability to do what you talked about today, put the folders behind and all of that. So I'm going to utilize the January through December. And then I do have a room for some extras in there, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to do your 7 extra. My question is, when I put the stuff in July, do you pick a date like at the end of the month? Like you just touched on it a little bit, or like Deb's sisters, what if her birthday was at the beginning of the month?
Yeah.
And someone who only has January through December, do you tell them to put the stuff that happens in like the first 5 days in like the last few days of the month before? You know what I'm asking?
Thank you so much for that question. So if you were to look in my planner, right around the 27th, 28th of each month, I have a perpetual entry that says Tickler. And I spend time looking at everything I need to do for the next month, and I then decide when I'm going to do it. So glad you asked that question. So Betsy is showing you some other kinds of office supplies. Now, Staples used to have something, they don't sell this anymore, but it was an accordion, and you see the holes in the back so you could tell whether or not there was any papers. And it was 1 to 31 and then January to December. So you have your whole Tickler in this one product. You can get the 1 to 31 now, which is what you have now, but you still have to create your own January to December. What's good and bad about this is if you don't have that much paper or big projects, you can easily use this and then slide this into a desktop file box, right? Piece of cake, or even a box bottom folder, those folders that are made with the wider bottom. This fits perfectly into a box bottom folder, but you don't have the ability to slide the other project folders around, which in my case, because I work on so many larger projects, I want that ability to do so. So you could easily do this and then create a January through December. This product is, I'm waiting for this to come back as soon as we figure things out with China. There's a veteran productivity expert. Her name is Barbara Hemphill. She is amazing. She coined the phrase, clutter is postponed decisions. I say it all the time. And she invented something called a Swift file. It's a Tickler, but it's an individual folder. So this is 1, this is 2, and then this fits into a box bottom folder. Right now, you can't get one. Hopefully in the next couple months you can, but it's about $79, which is fine. I think it's absolutely worth it, but you can create one by going out and purchasing your own office supplies, which is what I did. But you can get something like this for, I think, between $25 and $60 at Staples. This is $79. But if you go and you buy 2 boxes of hanging file folders, you know, at Staples for a good price, which comes with the tabs, that's 50 folders. You've got your 43 right there. You number your tabs 1 to 31, January to December, and then you have 7 active files. And voila, you're done.
And then just one more thing, you said on the 28th of the month, you have something in your planner that says, and so you do that every month, where you look at the next month and you work on setting that up.
Yes, so for you, my digital girlfriend,
Yes.
I would put a repetitive reminder on the 28th that says set up Tickler. And so now what you're doing is a couple days before the end of the month, you are now setting up your next month.
And I want you to know, I am the digital gal. I set up a reminder for every morning at 6 a.m. just because I work on things, and this is gonna be my thing. I have not been able to master this, so please everyone, thoughts for me. I can do this. So thank you. This has been
You're
great.
welcome.
Thank
So we are out of time. I'll take maybe one or two more questions because I want to hold people up. Anybody have any burning last minute questions on a Tickler system? Looking for hands. You're all good? Okay. I can see you all now. Please raise your hand and be honest with me if you feel overwhelmed by the information I just gave you. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Please raise your hands if you're going to try this yourself. Okay. All right, so I'm very friendly, I don't bite. If you try this and you're having a hard time, just call me, just email me, and I'll help walk you through it. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I wish everybody a very healthy and happy summer. I hope to see many of you next month at our next pen on our inbox situation. So July 15th, 11 a.m. Registration link will be on my website starting tomorrow and in next month's e-zine. And if you really love this, tell people about it and invite them to come next. Okay. All right, beautiful ladies. Oh, next month, this won't be here, okay? I don't know what it's gonna look like next month, but next month, and then I share an office with my husband. I don't know, I don't want to see too much of the other side. And then I don't have to share an office when I move, so I don't know what my background will look like, but wish me luck.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
All right, thank you for coming.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Next month.